The call came while I was teaching my 4th grade class in suburban Minneapolis. 28 kids working on fractions, and my phone buzzing insistently in my desk drawer. I ignored it twice. Parents knew not to call during school hours. But the third time, something in my gut twisted. "Keep working on problem 12, I told the class, stepping into the hallway. "Mrs. Davidson, this is Dr. Patel's office. We need you to come in today." "Today? I'm teaching until 3:30. "The doctor wants to discuss your blood work. Can you come at 4? Blood work. Just routine stuff I'd done last week because I'd been tired. So tired that I'd fallen asleep at my desk during lunch twice. But I was 42, teaching full-time, raising 2 teenagers alone since Greg died 3 years ago. Of course I was tired. The medical building smelled like all medical buildings, disinfectant and fear. Dr. Patel, usually cheerful, looked serious. "Jennifer, your white blood cell count is extremely elevated. Your platelets are low. I'm referring you to oncology immediately." Oncology, the cancer word without saying cancer. "There must be a mistake. I just need iron supplements or..." "Your white count is 89,000. Normal is 4,000 to 11,000. The numbers meant nothing and everything. Dr. Nguyen, the oncologist, was young enough to be my former student. She ordered a bone marrow biopsy for the next morning. "We need to determine exactly what we're dealing with," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Have you ever had someone drill into your hip bone while you're awake? They numb the skin, but can't numb bone. The drilling sensation travels up your spine, through your teeth." I gripped the nurse's hand. Maria, her name was Maria, and bit down on a washcloth to keep from screaming. 15 minutes that felt like 15 hours. "You did great," Maria said, but her eyes were too kind, the kind that knew bad news was coming. 3 days later, back in Dr. Nguyen's office, my son Jake, 17, insisted on coming. My daughter Emma, 15, was at soccer practice. I hadn't told her yet, hadn't told anyone except Jake, who'd found me crying over my laptop, reading about white blood cells. "It's acute myeloid leukemia," Dr. Nguyen said. "AML. We need to start treatment immediately." "How immediately?" "You'll be admitted tonight." "Tonight? But I have lesson plans to write. Emma has a tournament this weekend." "Jennifer, your platelets are at 20,000. You could start bleeding internally at any moment." Jake grabbed my hand. His palm was sweaty, but he was trying to be strong. So much like his father. That same stubborn jaw, those same green eyes that wouldn't let me see him cry. That night, I sat in a hospital bed at Methodist Hospital, an IV already in my arm, when my principal, Robert, called. "Jennifer, take all the time you need," he said. But I heard the subtext, the budget concerns, the substitute costs, the parents who would complain. Emma arrived with Jake, still in her soccer uniform, cleats tracking mud on the pristine floor. "Mom, what's happening?" "How do you tell your 15-year-old you have leukemia? You don't sugarcoat it because she's smart and will know. You don't overdramatize because she's already lost her father. You find the middle ground." "I have leukemia. It's a blood cancer. I'm starting chemotherapy tonight." She crawled into the hospital bed with me, cleats and all. "Are you going to die?" "Not if I can help it." But I wasn't sure that was true. The chemotherapy they use for AML isn't like other chemos. It's called 7+3, 7 days of cytarabine, 3 days of daunorubicin. They essentially destroy your bone marrow and hope it grows back without cancer. You live in the hospital for at least a month. The first night, the chemo nurse, Patricia, came in wearing what looked like a hazmat suit. "This is pretty toxic stuff," she said, hanging the red bag. They called daunorubicin the red devil. "You might feel okay tonight, but days 3 through 5 are rough." Rough was an understatement. By day 3, I couldn't keep water down. My hair started falling out in clumps. Not gradually, but like someone was pulling handfuls from my scalp. The inside of my mouth developed sores that made swallowing feel like gargling glass. My blood counts dropped to nearly 0. No white cells to fight infection. No platelets to prevent bleeding. Barely enough red cells to carry oxygen. "You're in the danger zone now," Dr. Nguyen explained. "Any infection could be fatal. We're moving you to isolation." Isolation meant negative pressure room. Everyone in masks and gowns. No fresh flowers or fruit. No visitors under 18. Emma and Jake could only wave from the hallway window. That's when Robert called again. Day 7 of chemo, day 7 of isolation, when I was at my lowest. "Jennifer, I need to discuss your position." "My position?" "The substitute situation isn't sustainable. Parents are complaining about consistency. I need to know when you'll be back." "I'm in isolation with no immune system, Robert." "I understand, but I have to think about the students. If you can't commit to returning by January, I'll need to hire a permanent replacement." January. It was October. That's less than 3 months. "I'm sorry, Jennifer. Budget constraints." He was firing me. While I was fighting for my life, he was worried about budget constraints. Jake was there for that call, sitting in the hallway where I could see him through the glass. He must have seen my face change because he stood up, pressed his palm against the window. I pressed mine against his, separated by glass and disease and bureaucracy. The next weeks blurred together. Blood transfusions, 7 units of red cells, 12 of platelets. Antibiotics for neutropenic fever that spiked to 103. Antifungals that made me hallucinate. I saw Greg once, sitting in the visitor's chair, and had a whole conversation with him before remembering he was dead. "Mom, who are you talking to?" Emma asked through the window. "Just myself, honey." But she looked scared. They both did, these kids who'd already lost one parent. Day 21, repeat bone marrow biopsy. If the leukemia was gone, I'd go into recovery phase. If not, more chemo, harder chemo. Maria held my hand again while they drilled. "You're tougher than you look," she said. "I'm a teacher. We're all tough." She laughed, but it was sad. The results came back mixed. The leukemia was reduced, but not gone. "We need another round," Dr. Nguyen said. "Higher doses." "Higher than what already nearly killed me?" "I'm afraid so." That night, I wrote letters to my kids, just in case. Sealed them, gave them to my sister Claire, who'd driven up from Iowa. "Only if," I said. "Shut up," she replied, but took them anyway. Round 2 was worse. The chemo killed everything. Cancer cells, healthy cells, the lining of my digestive system. I couldn't eat for 10 days, survived on IV nutrition. My platelet count hit 8,000, so low that crying could cause bleeding in my brain. They transfused me so often that I developed antibodies, making it harder to find matching blood. And then Robert sent the official termination letter via email. Due to extended absence exceeding FMLA protection, it began. 12 years at that school, Teacher of the Year twice, and I was fired via email while lying in isolation with a platelet count that could kill me if I sneezed too hard. Jake read it to me through the glass. I couldn't focus my eyes on screens anymore. He was furious, 17-year-old rage with nowhere to go. "I'll burn down the school," he muttered. "You will not." "It's not fair, Mom." "No, baby, it's not." But fairness had left the building when Greg's heart stopped at 41, when my bone marrow turned traitor at 42, when the place I'd given everything to abandoned me at my weakest. Day 30 of round 2, the fever came. Not the manageable neutropenic fevers I'd had before. This was different. Rigors, they called them. Uncontrollable shaking, like my body was having its own earthquake. My temperature hit 104.5 before they packed me in ice. I remember thinking this was it. This was how I'd leave my kids, not dramatically, but pathetically, shaking and burning in a hospital bed while they watched through glass. Dr. Nguyen came in at midnight, not a good sign. The blood cultures show gram-negative sepsis. We're starting you on triple antibiotics. Sepsis, blood infection, with no immune system to fight it. The next 72 hours, I don't remember much. Claire told me later that I talked to Greg constantly, had full conversations with dead relatives, tried to teach math lessons to invisible students. The kids weren't allowed to see me during the worst of it. But somehow, the antibiotics worked. My fever broke on day 4. On day 5, my white cells started climbing, slowly, then faster. The bone marrow was recovering. "You're one tough cookie," Patricia said when I was finally lucid again. "Tough cookie sounds like something good to eat," I replied, and she laughed so hard she cried. Or maybe she was just crying. Hard to tell in oncology. Day 42, second bone marrow biopsy results. "Complete remission," Dr. Nguyen announced, actually smiling. "Remission. Not cured. AML is rarely cured, but remission. What's next? Recovery, then maintenance chemo. Monthly for a year. You can do it outpatient." Outpatient, home, my own bed, food that wasn't hospital food. But home was complicated now. No job meant no income. COBRA insurance was $100 to $800 a month. The medical bills, even with insurance, were astronomical. Disability paid 60% of my salary, which barely covered the mortgage Greg's life insurance had mostly paid off. Claire stayed another week, helping me readjust. I couldn't drive. Chemo brain made me confused, and my reflexes were shot. Couldn't clean. My immune system was still rebuilding. Couldn't even help Emma with homework without getting exhausted. And then the kids' school called. The same school district I'd given 12 years to. "Mrs. Davidson? This is Barbara from the counseling office. We're concerned about Jake and Emma's absences. Their mother has leukemia. Yes, we're aware, but they've missed significant class time. Jake's grades are slipping. Emma quit soccer. We may need to consider retention if this continues." Retention. Holding my kids back because they were caring for their dying mother. "Are you serious?" "We have standards to maintain." Standards. The same standards I'd upheld for 12 years until my bone marrow betrayed me. Jake had been doing my job, and his: cooking, cleaning, driving Emma to school, managing my medications. Emma had quit soccer to be home in case I needed help. They were children being forced into adulthood, and the school wanted to punish them for it. The maintenance chemo started 2 weeks after discharge. Once a month, I'd go to the cancer center, sit in a chair for 6 hours while they pumped cytarabine into my veins. Not as brutal as induction, but still enough to make me sick for a week after. The first treatment, I ran into another teacher from my school, Carol, who taught 5th grade. She was there with her husband, who had lymphoma. "Jennifer, I heard Robert told us you resigned." "I didn't resign. He fired me." Her face went white. "He said you chose to focus on your health." "He terminated me while I was in isolation." She looked at her husband, then back at me. That's not what he told everyone." Of course it wasn't. The truth came out slowly. Robert had told the staff I'd abandoned my position, told the parents I'd chosen to leave, painted himself as the victim trying to maintain stability for the students. Meanwhile, he'd hired my replacement, a 23-year-old fresh from college who'd work for half my salary. The other teachers were furious when they learned the truth. They started a collection, sent grocery cards and gas cards. Parents who found out organized meal trains. The union rep called, said I should sue, but lawyers required energy I didn't have. Month 3 of maintenance, I developed severe neuropathy. My hands and feet burned constantly, like walking on hot coals with gloves made of fire. The oncologist reduced the dose, but the damage was done. I couldn't write, could barely type. Teaching, even if I got another job, seemed impossible. "Maybe this is temporary," Claire said during one of her visits, but we both knew better. AML treatment causes permanent damage. The cure is almost worse than the disease. Jake got a part-time job at Target, working evenings and weekends. "For college savings?" he said, but I knew it was for groceries. Emma started babysitting, hiding the cash in my purse when she thought I wasn't looking. My children were keeping us afloat while their school threatened them with retention. Then came the letter from the district's insurance department. Due to my termination, COBRA would end after 18 months. I had 9 months left of coverage, then nothing. The maintenance chemo alone was $8,000 per treatment without insurance. The blood work, the monitoring, the medications, impossible without coverage. I called Robert directly, swallowing my pride. "Please, just rehire me part-time. Anything. I need the insurance." "Jennifer, you know I can't do that. Your position has been filled." "Any position? Aide, substitute, cafeteria? You're a liability now." "What if you relapse? What if you can't fulfill your duties? What if I die without insurance?" Silence. Then, "That's not my responsibility." But it was. 12 years I'd given that school everything. Came in sick, stayed late, bought supplies with my own money, tutored kids for free. And when I needed them, they calculated my worth and found me wanting. The universe has a sense of humor, though. Month 6 of maintenance, local news did a story about teacher shortages. They interviewed Robert, who lamented about retention issues, about experienced teachers leaving the profession. "We value our educators," he said to the camera. "They're the backbone of our community." Jake threw a shoe at the TV. The reporter, a young woman named Ashley, noticed our story in the comments when the video aired online. Someone had written about me, about what really happened. Ashley called, wanted to interview me. "I don't want pity," I said. "This isn't about pity. It's about truth." So I did it. Sat in my living room, bald head covered with a scarf Emma had bought me, and told the truth. About the termination during treatment, about the insurance threats, about kids being punished for caring for sick parents. The segment aired the following Tuesday. By Wednesday, the school's Facebook page was flooded. Parents were furious. Teachers from other districts shared their own stories. The union president called for an investigation. The school board scheduled an emergency meeting. Robert called me, furious. "You've made me look like a monster." I told the truth. "You've ruined my reputation. You ruined my life." But that wasn't entirely true. He'd changed it, certainly, made it harder. But ruined? I was still here, still fighting, still teaching my kids that standing up for yourself matters, even when you can barely stand. The school board meeting was packed. Parents spoke, teachers spoke, I spoke. Voice shaking, hands trembling from neuropathy, but clear. I talked about dedication, about abandonment, about the message it sends when we discard people at their weakest. Robert sat in the front row, face red, jaw clenched. His contract was up for renewal. The board would vote next month. 2 weeks later, another call from Barbara at the school. "Mrs. Davidson, we've reviewed Jake and Emma's situations. Given the circumstances, we're waiving the absence requirements." What changed? Community feedback. Community feedback. Code for public humiliation. Month 9 of maintenance, I got a call from an attorney. "Ms. Davidson, I'm representing 3 other teachers terminated during medical leave from your district. We'd like you to join a class action suit." 3 others. Robert had a pattern. "I don't have money for lawyers." Contingency basis. We only get paid if we win. And if we win? reinstatement, back pay, and damages. Plus, policy changes to protect sick employees. I thought about the energy it would take, the stress, the public attention. Then I thought about the next teacher who'd get diagnosed with something awful, who'd need their job, their insurance, their dignity. Send me the papers. Month 11, the news broke. Robert's contract wasn't renewed. Pursuing other opportunities, the official statement said. But everyone knew. The man who'd fired cancer patients was himself fired. He'd have to explain in every future interview why he'd left, why a successful principal would suddenly be pursuing other opportunities. His replacement called me the next week. Dr. Williams, from Chicago, brought in specifically to clean up the mess. Jennifer, I'd like to discuss your return. I can't teach full-time anymore. The neuropathy? Part-time. 3 days a week. Full benefits. Same pay rate. You can do that? I can do whatever I think is right. And this is right. I cried. Sobbed, actually, great heaving sobs that probably confused him. But they were relief tears, dignity tears, validation tears. The lawsuit settled month 15. Not millions, but enough. Enough to pay off medical debt, to set aside college funds, to breathe. More importantly, the district implemented new policies protecting employees during medical leave. They called it the Davidson Protocol, which made Jake proud and Emma embarrassed. I returned to teaching part-time that fall. Different classroom, same school. Some parents requested me specifically, the teacher who'd fought back, who'd survived both cancer and bureaucracy. My hands still burned, still shook, but I found ways to adapt. Voice to text for comments, a special chair for bad days, students who helped without being asked because they knew Ms. Davidson was fighting something bigger than fractions. Robert, I heard, took a position 2 states away. Assistant principal at a middle school. A demotion, really. His wife filed for divorce. Apparently, the public humiliation was too much for her image. He'd lost his job, his reputation, his family. Not because he'd gotten sick, but because he'd been cruel to someone who was. There's a certain justice in that. Jake graduated with honors, gave a speech about resilience that made everyone cry. He'd written his college essay about those months, about being 17 and afraid and angry and proud all at once. Got into Northwestern with a partial scholarship. Emma started soccer again, made varsity. Wore pink cleats for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but told everyone they were for all cancer patients. Especially the ones who keep fighting, she'd say, looking at me from the field. The AML could come back. Probably will, eventually. The 5-year survival rate is about 25%, worse for people over 40. But I've already beaten the odds by surviving those first brutal rounds, by making it through maintenance, by being here at all. Sometimes I see former students around town. They hug me, tell me I look good. Don't mention the way my hands shake or how I sometimes forget their names. They remember the lessons about perseverance I taught without meaning to, just by showing up, by refusing to disappear quietly. Patricia, my chemo nurse, sent a card last week. Inside, she'd written, "Saw the news about the lawsuit. About time someone fought back. You were always tougher than you looked." Tough. Such a small word for what we become when we have to. When our bodies betray us, when our employers abandon us, when the system we've served turns its back. We become steel wrapped in scarred skin, titanium souls in fragile bones. I still teach fractions to 4th graders 3 days a week. Still lose my hair to maintenance chemo once a month. Still fight with insurance companies and medical bills and the exhaustion that never quite leaves. But I'm here, in my classroom, with my students, with my children, who've learned too young that life is both precious and precarious. Robert sent a letter last month. An apology, sort of. Said he'd been under pressure, made difficult decisions, hoped I understood. I didn't reply. Some bridges deserve to stay burned. Some people deserve to live with their choices, to wake up every day knowing they were weak when someone needed strength. The doctor says I'm still in remission. 15 months and counting. Each clear scan is a victory. Each normal blood count a small miracle. The students don't know their teacher has a sword hanging over her head, that every headache could be relapse, every bruise could be the beginning of the end. But they know Ms. Davidson doesn't give up. That when things get hard, you keep going. That sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the thing that shows you who you really are, and who everyone else is too. My classroom has a poster now. Tough times don't last, tough people do. It's cliché, something I would have mocked before. But now I point to it when kids struggle with multiplication, when they say something's too hard, when they want to quit. Look at me, I tell them. Do I look like someone who quits? They shake their heads, get back to work. They don't know the whole story. The termination, the lawsuit, the nights in isolation, the way their principal tried to bury me while I was already underground. They just know Ms. Davidson came back, different, but determined. That's enough. That's everything. The bell rings, students file out, and I sit at my desk with its ergonomic cushion and voice-activated computer. Through the window, I can see the parking spot where I collapsed that first day back, where maintenance had to help me to the nurse's office, where I thought my teaching days were over. But they weren't. I'm still here, in the same building where Robert tried to erase me. His office is down the hall, occupied by Dr. Williams now, who waves when she passes my door. She keeps my story in mind when making decisions, she says. Remembers that teachers are humans first. My phone buzzes. Emma, texting from high school. Mom, killed my history presentation. Teacher said I argued like someone who knows how to fight for important things. I smile, my crooked post-chemo smile that doesn't quite work right anymore. She learned that from watching me refuse to disappear, refuse to go quietly, refuse to let them win. Tomorrow I'll wake up, take my handful of pills, drive to school with my still burning hands, and teach 9-year-olds about perseverance disguised as mathematics. I'll come home exhausted, but not defeated. I'll help with homework, make dinner with ingredients my kids bought with money they earned, and fall asleep knowing I survived another day. That's what victory looks like now. Not the big moments, the lawsuits and settlements and vindication, but the small ones, still breathing, still teaching, still here despite everyone who thought I'd have the decency to disappear. Robert's teaching middle school in Nebraska now. I looked him up once, just to see. His school photo shows a tired man, graying and diminished. Comments on the school's Facebook page mention he seems strict, unfriendly, that he lacks warmth. He's become what he always was, someone who sees people as problems to be managed rather than humans to be helped. I could feel sorry for him. Sometimes, late at night when the neuropathy keeps me awake, I almost do. But then I remember that cold email, the termination letter that came while nurses were drawing my blood to see if I'd survive the week. I remember that's not my responsibility when I begged for insurance. I remember him telling others I'd abandoned my post while I was learning to walk again. No, I don't feel sorry for him. I save my sympathy for people who deserve it, for other patients in the infusion center, for teachers diagnosed with terrible things, for anyone facing both illness and indifference. Next week marks 2 years since diagnosis. 2 years since my white count hit 89,000 and my life imploded. Emma wants to celebrate. She calls it my cancerversary. But I just want to mark it quietly. Maybe I'll sit in my classroom after school, at the desk they tried to take from me, and appreciate the circular beauty of still being there when Robert isn't. The district has my photo in the lobby now, Teacher of the Year again, awarded after my return. In it, I'm smiling with my thin post-chemo hair and my shaking hands hidden behind my back, surrounded by students who don't know their teacher sued their school and won. Dr. Williams insisted on the photo, on the recognition, on making sure everyone who enters understands that this school values its teachers now. Even the sick ones? I asked her. Especially the sick ones, she replied. They're the ones who show us what strength really looks like. Strength, such a complicated word now. It's not about being unbreakable. God knows I broke 100 times in that hospital room. It's about breaking and continuing anyway. About being fired via email while neutropenic and still fighting back. About losing everything, your health, your hair, your job, your security, and finding out there's still something left worth saving. The maintenance chemo continues indefinitely. My oncologist says as long as it's working, we keep going. Monthly poisoning to prevent worse poisoning. It's a devil's bargain, but it's the only bargain available. Jake calls from College Weekly, tells me about his pre-med classes. He wants to be an oncologist, he says. Wants to be the doctor who doesn't just treat the disease, but sees the person. Emma's considering teaching, which terrifies and thrills me. But only if they can't fire me for getting sick, she says, and we both know she's serious. The lawsuit money paid for their education, for the medical debt, for the time I couldn't work. Robert's cruelty, transformed into my children's futures. There's poetry in that, the kind that makes you believe in cosmic justice, even when you don't believe in much else. Sometimes new teachers ask me about what happened. The stories become legend in the district. The principal who fired cancer patients, the teacher who fought back, the lawsuit that changed everything. I tell them the truth. That institutions will abandon you, that people you trust will disappoint you, but that you're stronger than you know. That sometimes losing everything shows you what's really worth keeping. My hands barely work anymore. The neuropathy is permanent, progressive. Eventually, I won't be able to teach at all. But for now, for today, for this moment, I'm still here. Still in my classroom, still fighting, still proving that some people don't have the decency to disappear just because it would be more convenient. The final bell rings. Students leave, chattering about weekend plans. I gather my things slowly, carefully, accommodating hands that don't quite obey. In the parking lot, I pass the spot where Robert used to park his BMW, now occupied by Dr. Williams' sensible Honda. She nods as she passes, this principal who understands that teachers are human first. The drive home is painful. Gripping the wheel aggravates the neuropathy. But it's my drive, my car, my journey home to children who watch their mother refuse to be erased. That's worth any amount of pain. Tomorrow, there will be more pills, more pain, more small victories disguised as ordinary moments. More teaching despite hands that shake, more fighting despite odds that haven't improved. More living, despite everyone who expected me to have the grace to die quietly. But I've never been graceful. Ask Robert. He learned that the hard way. Sometimes the best revenge isn't living well. It's simply living when someone expected you to disappear. It's showing up to the place that tried to forget you, teaching in the building where you were terminated, existing loudly in spaces that wanted your absence. The AML will probably win eventually. Statistics don't lie, and 25% survival at 5 years means 75% don't make it. But today isn't 5 years. Today is day 700 and something of proving Robert wrong, of showing my kids that some fights are worth having even if you lose, of teaching 4th graders that perseverance isn't just about math problems. That's my victory, not the lawsuit money or the policy changes or Robert's humiliation. It's the simple, radical act of continuing. of being too stubborn to disappear, too angry to quit, too alive to let them bury me before I'm actually dead. My phone buzzes one last time. Dr. Nguyen's office, confirming next week's appointment. More blood work, more monitoring, more hoping the numbers stay stable. I confirm and drive home to my life. Complicated, painful, difficult, but undeniably and defiantly mine.